Hey everyone, it's kind of been a while since I posted a vlog entry, and so I kind of wanted to recap what happened out at Squaw Peak 50. And so I got my LaCroix here. They should sponsor me. I love LaCroix. But I'm ready to tell you how my 50 miler went and all the ups and downs of running super far in the mountains. So the race started out at a park called Vivian Park in Provo Canyon at 5 a.m. Oh, Sydney's about to make a jump down here. At about 5 a.m. in the morning. I got there pretty early, about an hour, and I was definitely nervous. You know, doing my usual pre-race stuff, making sure that all of my, that my bag is all full and everything is ready to go. And the first couple of miles of the race were on a paved path, which is pretty nice. I was pretty happy about that. I'm a pretty good road runner and I enjoy running on paved paths. And so to start like that was pretty nice. And so there are a few miles with that, and those were pretty quick. I think everyone in the race like pretty much busted out pretty fast miles there. I was probably keeping about an 8-minute mile pace for the first like 3 or 4 miles before we ended up heading into the mountains on the Bonneville Shoreline Trail out in Provo. And as soon as we had got on the trail, you know, you start the Congo line of all the people on single track, and they were all pretty packed in. And so I was walking a lot of the uphills because I was just kind of stuck in line. And people started to kind of go around, and I ended up stuck behind this guy named Mike. And him and I started chatting. It turned out that he was actually from Coral Springs as well. And so I kind of took that as like a sign that maybe I should walk a little bit with this guy. He had run the race a couple of times previously and told me that this part I should walk. So I did. I just kind of walked with him for a bit. And we made it up to the first aid station together. We separated there. I kind of breezed right through the aid station. They had some food available, but my stomach wasn't really feeling like it was going to take like real food. They had pancakes. And so I just kind of kept going. It ended up continued to go uphill to the Squaw Peak overlook. And this was probably my favorite part of the course. It was really pretty. It was pretty early morning. Lighting was beautiful. It was incredibly scenic. I had done this part of the course before, and so I knew where I was. And yeah, that part was great. I went through a couple more aid stations before we went into a really long downhill, and I kind of started to find my jam there. And the downhill was probably from miles like 12 to 20-ish. It was a nice long, pretty just gentle downhill, and I was going pretty quick. I made it to mile 20, and that was my first time that I saw Frank. And that was super nice. That was great. I was feeling good. I think I may have switched out my socks at that point because from the beginning I was having blister issues, and so that kind of blew up on me a little bit later in the race. But I was feeling really great at mile 20. Frank gave me some soda. I love soda, so he got some ginger ale for me. I took in a lot of calories. I was eating well. I was doing everything. It was all good. And then from there, it went to up a pretty steep road called Hobble Creek. Now that I've done the race, I've looked back on that road. It was a pretty challenging section, and I did kind of like a walk run. Anytime it was too uphill, I walked, and then would run like anything that was pretty gentle or flat or downhill. And I found that by the end of it that I probably should have ran the whole thing because of some of the parts later in the course, and the fact that I've always been a pretty good road runner. And I feel confident on the roads. So next year, if I run this race or if I run it in the future, which I probably will, I think that section I'm going to push a little bit harder to head into that next aid station. And that aid station was at the marathon mark. and this is where I picked up my pacer. I went right through the aid station, filled up my water, didn't really hang out too much. I was trying not to hang out at aid stations, although later on I ended up hanging out a lot more. And I started going up this dirt road. Quick LaCroix break. So the dirt road section was hard, but it wasn't too bad. It went into this large uphill meadow area that it kind of looked flat, but it wasn't, which was really making things hard for me. That it was not flat, but it kind of looked flat. And this was probably the first section of the course that I really started to struggle. It was hard on me. I was getting past. My feet were really starting to hurt, and it was hot. And I wasn't really eating very well. My pacer, Dan, a friend of mine that I run with a lot, he kept reminding me to eat over and over again, which was good. But I was definitely struggling. But at that point, I made it into the 33-mile aid station, which was the only cutoff of the course. And I made it about 2.5 hours before the cutoff. So I knew at that point that I was going to make it. However, I did hang out at that aid station for probably about 20-ish, maybe 25 minutes. I kind of wish I could have gotten through that aid station a little faster, but I think some inexperience led to me hanging out there for too long. I ate. I changed out my shoes and socks. My blisters were terrible. And this was when I started to have trouble with one of my toenails. One of my toenails was starting to kind of like work its way off of my foot, which is a really painful thing to go through and have to run. And I sat there and I tried putting on, tape and Vaseline. I was trying everything to get my feet back to normal. None of it helped. So looking at how that went, I think going forward, my next races, I'm running through that. It wasn't anything real injury worthy. It was just really nasty blisters and toenails that were giving me some trouble. So, but at that point I knew that I had made it through, and the little bit of rest that I got kind of gave me a second wind, and I started, it was a very slight uphill section of single track, and I just started passing tons of people. I was, Dan mentioned to me a couple of times that he was like, we're going quick, like we're cooking. And so that was nice. And the trail largely flattened out, for quite a ways. And I was definitely going pretty fast. And then that brought me to mile 39, which was the start of the big hill. And this mentally was the toughest part of the race for me. I was with a group of women at this point, and one of them was a pacer, and she'd done the race before. And I looked up at the hill and was like, so am I going to have to go all the way to the top of that? And she just says, don't think about it. Don't look at that hill. Just look down at your feet. That hill was huge. It was probably pretty close to 3,000 feet of gain over the course of 2 miles from mile 39 to 41. I think I only got passed by one group the whole time, but everyone was struggling, and this part of the race took me a long time. It was hot, it was incredibly steep, and I'm not a very good uphill runner compared to some people, so it was a struggle. But I finally made it up to the top, got to the aid station. I hung out there for probably a little bit too long again, and then started the descent to the final aid station before the end of the race. This part of the course was, for me, probably one of the worst parts. The hill was bad, but I think it was equally bad for everyone. This part of the course was mostly downhill on really technical rocky terrain. which is not something that I'm good at. I have a bad ankle. And so to go from going really uphill on this nasty hill to going to a technical downhill was incredibly difficult. And I really had to like hunker down and just remind myself that I could get through this, and it was just a matter of me putting one foot in front of the other. At this point, I saw Frank. He kind of hiked up this one section. He came to me with a little bit of food and stuff. As soon as I saw him, I think I almost started crying about how Javelina was going to be twice as bad because it's 100 miles and stuff. But I was fine. I just was taking it really slow. And then this brought me to the final aid station. I stayed there very briefly and then got onto the road. The road was a hilly, slight net downhill. And this part, it was about 4.5 miles from there to the end of the course. Also, by the way, the course was not 50 miles. It was like 53 or something like that. It was more than 50 miles. But I got onto the road and realized that I could break 13 hours if I just booked it. And so I booked it. I went flying down that road. I was like getting sub 8s, which is really hard on legs that have already been through like 47 hilly miles. You have to remember this course has a lot of gain to it. This is one of the hardest 50 milers in the country. So I just started like booking it down. I passed every single person that passed me on the nasty downhill section. I almost dropped Dan. It was awesome. I felt great at the end. I was thrilled about that. So that was really fun. And I made it into the end at around, I think it was like 12:51. So a respectable time. I think I can do better now that I know the course. But overall, I really feel like I learned a lot. I learned a lot about just the amount of mental grit it takes to get through a 50 mile or any sort of ultra marathon. And I learned a lot about running and putting one foot in front of the other, and a lot of things that I can take to Javelina. And so I'll do another post later on about my recovery, but I'm already back to running. This has been one of the best and fastest recoveries I've had after a race. But it's been really great. I mean, this was the very first training block that I've ever had that I didn't get hurt. I had 0 injuries. It was great. So hopefully I can carry that with me into Javelina. I've been feeling good, a little tired, but I've just taken it easy, running nice and slow for the past few weeks, and I'm gonna kind of continue that for a while. But yeah, I'm incredibly happy with how it went. It was a great race. I mean, there was definitely some suffering, but I mean, it's 50 miles. What do you expect? So that was Squaw. It was fantastic. And if you're ever here in Utah, I highly suggest coming out and running that race. It was a good one. So now my main focus going forward is the Javelina 100. I have a couple of long training runs I'm going to be doing, 2 road marathons that I'm using as training runs. And yeah, a lot of work ahead of me as I head into October. But yeah, so I'm glad to tell you guys all about my race, and thanks for listening, and thanks for reading my blog and watching my videos. And I'll try and post a little bit more as we go forward about my training and about the next steps and what I'm doing. And so thanks again. Hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.